Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Waiting for a few minutes for people to join and then we will start the stream. I need to move my mic. I keep bumping into it. All right. Hello, 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 everyone. Let's see how this afternoon starts. Waiting a few minutes for people to join and then we will discuss Bitcoin in priority, the main idea of the stream. I have approximately 30 to 45 minutes ahead of me. After that, I'm leaving to meet up with some mates for tonight, France World Cup game. So yeah, the main idea of the stream, plan for the stream is BTC in priority, H4 daily, weekly, even if not much to say on daily, and then perfect. And then yeah, a couple of chat requests if we have some time. Unfortunately, I don't have much time. If there are some people in the Haven watching and you have some chat requests, you can keep them for tomorrow afternoon. I will be live around the same time than right now tomorrow, and I will have more time to do more chat requests. Same thing if you are in the Haven, you are probably going to hear a little bit of a repeat of what I discussed yesterday in the dedicated video for Bitcoin. Otherwise, welcome. Let's see if today's stream can help the market or not. What is the Doge Real Support HTF? You know what? It's been ages that I didn't take a look at Doge, so I'm gonna take a look at Doge. But I would assume that considering what you're telling me, it's probably taking quite the shit. But yeah, we'll take a look at Doge after I'm done with Bitcoin. It's not going to be anything particularly new if you watch the recent streams, mostly because it's still very much the same focuses. There have been good focuses. If you've been watching the streams last week, you should know that I keep spamming you guys that sticking to the daily time frame is probably a very good idea, and especially as daily downtrend keeps getting lower and lower, mostly because it means that if daily downtrend is your focus as a must break / reclaim, the lower it is, the better your entry eventually when it's broken, obviously. But most interestingly for me right now on the daily time frame is that let's imagine that Bitcoin finds bottom or dives a little bit more and eventually comes for a reclaim of this region for any reason. I don't know, maybe one day. But let's imagine that we are in a world where we have a combination of a low 60s plus daily downtrend reclaim. You would have a fantastic setup to chase. You would have the confluence of a daily trend break plus key horizontal level reclaim. And for example, this is the kind of setup that I would want to go for. While right now, if you're knife snatching, you are pretty much fighting against the daily and H4 downtrend. It doesn't mean that on a long enough period of time, buys below 60s are not going to be rewarded and are not good buys. If you are long-term bullish on Bitcoin, probably buying in these regions is interesting. I know that personally, a place where I'm going to feel forced to buy, even if we are in a daily, weekly H4 downtrend, is going to be a deviation below weekly 300 MA. I believe that we discussed that enough over the past few months for you guys to be aware of it. But if, like me, you are more focused on taking setups when they are offered rather than buying and holding, then in that case, the daily downtrend focus remains very good. It's still very much the same one since the 77.578 loss. It's been retested a couple of times over the past 2 weeks, and the 2 times it got absolutely denied. But yeah, basically on the daily, nothing new if you watch the recent streams, very much still focused on the daily downtrend, which is now sitting in the 61 up to 64K region. Friendly reminder, and it's gonna be true as much for the daily update as it's going to be for the H4 update. If you are focused on a trend, if you are waiting for a trend to be broken to execute a setup, for example, and you want to minimize the chances to have a fake out, if you want to minimize the situations where you have a close above the trend but immediately gets denied, you can focus on the -1 time frame 200 EMA. If it's broken and flipped, it's usually a very good indicator that you have a solid trend reclaim, and then you can work from there. Which means that from here, if you are focused on the daily trend, wait for a close above the daily trend, wait for H4 200 EMA to be broken, and if/when that's the case, you are aiming for the next gap fill to capture. The third condition that I have in the system when I'm trying to play those kind of setups, let's imagine that eventually we are in a situation where we can try to capture a move from the daily trend break to daily 100 EMA. The third condition, outside of breaking the daily downtrend, breaking H4 200 EMA, it's how wide the gap is. Obviously, the wider the gap, the more interesting it is to take the setup, because obviously the more you have to capture. Recent consolidation proved this quite well. Again, I'm repeating myself, but it never hurts to repeat yourself. If you try to capture this gap fill, that was very interesting, wide gap. Even over there, still a very decent gap. When it was in this region, it was probably less interesting in terms of what you could capture. So far, if the reclaim was to happen in the next couple of days, next few days, next week, I don't know what's going to happen in the market. This is a wide enough of gap for me to be interested to chase. But until it's the case, basically the TLDR from today update for the Bitcoin daily chart is that we are still very much below daily downtrend. And the system says that if you are below daily downtrend, you just stick the fuck out and you wait. It's not easy. Waiting is not the easy part. If you've been trading the markets long enough, if you spend some time watching the market, you should know that very well. The waiting part can be as hard as the rest of the execution. The only cure I found from that, the only two things that I found that are helping me to remain patient. The first thing is to scan the market, trying to find other plays, trying to find places where we are above daily trend, where you can justify taking a setup, for example. The second thing is simply to touch grass, which is probably the best way not to do mistakes. Spending time outside, obviously, it's the summer, it's the World Cup. You probably have a lot of good excuses not to watch the charts right now, to be honest, unless it's 45 degrees outside, obviously. But yeah, it is how it is. So if you have to leave the stream right now, if you can't watch the rest of the stream, leave by telling yourself that we are still very much in a daily downtrend. You can set some alerts at H4 200 EMA, above H4 daily 32 EMA. If a bottom is formed and we bounce, you are if you are focused on the daily trend, in current state of things, you are probably going to miss the first initial impulse. But if you manage to avoid this entire shit show, you are probably winning compared to the vast majority of market participants. So that's it for the daily time frame. Basically nothing new from what we discussed last week. On H4, main focus we discussed last week was H4 downtrend, mostly because we failed to fill the gap to H4 200 EMA, immediately lost H4 100 EMA, which is usually a sign of weakness when we are trying to play gap fills. If you are in a situation where you have a strong trend break, you have a first gap, and it fails to deliver any kind of follow-up after that, and it fails particularly to go to 200 EMA, it means that on the higher time frame, on the daily, it did not even give a full trend retest. And I call full trend retest when we go all the way to 32 EMA, which is close to H4 200 EMA. So that was a worrying sign for BT last week, and it was the main reason that we knew H4 200 EMA was probably going to be a strong focus to have. Ever since, we can see that retested once, denied, retested again, denied, retested again this weekend, denied, retested yesterday a few times, denied. If we apply the same logic that on the daily time frame, What you want to see to consider H4 downtrend to be broken is a close above H4 trend, obviously, and H1 200 MA flipped. If slash when you have both of these cases, both of these conditions, I believe that you can expect to move back to H4 100 MA. And in a crazy world where Sailor is not sailing or whatever bullshit is come up with, a move to H4 200 MA. In current state of things, and by that I mean in the current state of how wide the gaps are between H1 200 MA, H4 100 MA, and H4 200 MA, I could be interested to take this scalp if I'm on the market, if I'm at the desk when an H4 downtrend reclaims happened. I could be interested to scalp it because the gaps are still big enough to have a fairly tight setup with an invalidation below H4 trend, for example, and aim all the way over there. But if, for example, we were to consolidate longer over here and the gaps were to reduce more, I would probably not be interested. The same way, if I'm not in front of the desk or at the desk in my place when this H4 downtrend reclaims happen, I'm very likely not to play it. Again, knowing that in any cases, my main focus remains the daily time frame. It's been the case for the past few months. Everywhere on the market. Again, if you watched the streams recently, if you are in the Haven, you know that I pivoted from a very H4 daily time frame focuses over the last 2 years to a almost exclusively daily time frame focus over the past 3 to 4 months. I tried less. I tried to have more selective setups, and it's been rewarding me well. So I gotta stick to it. What I'm trying to tell you right now is that if I'm at the desk, I could be interested in taking a setup like this because the gaps are wide enough. But if I was to miss it, if I was to miss a bounce up to H4 200 MA, that would not prevent me from sleeping because that would barely mean that we are retesting the daily trend fully. At best, I would be more excited than sad to miss a bounce into the daily trend because it would mean that we are trying to break that daily downtrend, and it means that I could be in business again if I have both of the conditions. So daily focus, daily trend, no changes. I believe you can set some alerts from H4 200 MA to daily 32 MA and wait for this to be broken. If you want to be more active in the market, if you're looking for potential scalps and you want to play the upside, obviously, then break off the H4 downtrend with the exact same conditions, but on H4. And that's about it. If we are seeing more downside, if you are expecting more downside, if you want to short H4 trend retest, if you want to short daily trend retests, what could be your main downside target? I believe that to me, the next logical downside target would be the weekly 300 MA region when we flip back to our weekly time frame focuses and our weekly time frame plan, which is the same thing that we've been discussing since January, basically. Ever since we lost weekly 100 MA, every time we discussed the weekly time frame, the main thing we discussed was that it was looking like a potential weekly EMA compression, which usually translates into a move from weekly 100 MA to weekly 200 MA, and if weekly 200 MA is lost, to weekly 300 MA. So to me, it means that in downside targets, I believe that deviations below the weekly 300 MA is a good place to secure some profits if you're shorting. And if you're looking for higher time frame buys, then to me, this is also the place where I'm going to be interested to do so. I've said it many times, but I'm going to say it again. If we are getting into that region, I'm going to be a buyer, but I'm not going to be a all-in, forget, come back in a couple of years and hope that I was right kind of buyer. I'm going to be a small buyer. I will be willing to build a basis of position. I'm not going to go all in. And the main justification for that is that I'm not going to be able to have a crystal clear invalidation whenever I buy in this region. Mostly because I can't know and I don't have tools in my system to appreciate how far we can deviate below this region. So that would be a place where I would be willing to buy things that could go down immensely without absolutely killing my portfolio. but that would still be a place where I believe that eventually I want to have a first basis exposure. The main idea behind that is, let's assume that we get into that region, because we are not there yet, but let's assume that we are in this region, but eventually it's a bottom wherever it goes, and eventually we get a reclaim of the daily downtrend, a little bit like we did during the last bear market. We deviate below weekly 300 MA, eventually it forms a bottom, we reclaim the weekly downtrend. What I want to do by buying below weekly 300 MA and build the first base is giving me some space for whenever we do reclaim that weekly downtrend, so that I can know that I have already some exposure and I'm less stressed into looking for an entry, and that I know that I can play a little bit more safe waiting for a proper trend reclaim. One of the good example I have lately is a long that I am opening on grass, for example, where I am applying the same logic. I'm bidding a weekly trend flip on grass right now, for example, but I'm only doing so with a third of the end exposure I would like to get. Because if I'm wrong, at least I take a small scratch instead of taking a full 1 hour loss. And if I'm right and we start uptrending, I already have some exposure. I have a first base exposure, and then I can play compounding with more peace of mind if we are to uptrend. That's the exact same logic or I don't know, we say in English, but that's the same logic I'm trying to apply with any kind of buys in this region. But I want to insist still that that will not be the kind of setup where I would be extremely comfortable. Again, because this is not the kind of situation where in my system I have clear invalidations. At the opposite, for example, of a trend reclaim, where I know that I can use the failure to flip the trend as an invalidation, on a trend reclaim plus 100 MA flip, where I can do the same thing, because I have tools in my system that says that if you are trying to play a trend reclaim and it fails to flip support immediately, you get the fuck out, basically. But when I'm blindly bidding those kind of deviations, it's not the case. The main thing I will be able to use would be invalidation, horizontal level, historical level, psychological level, 45K, 50K, I don't know. We are not there yet, again, I insist. I'm just trying to guide you through how I'm seeing things, if we are to see more downside from here, and how I want to approach it, basically. I think it's pretty clear. Again, if you've been watching the streams for the past few months, if you are in the Haven, it's probably nothing new for you, because it's been the same fucking chat for 4 months now, 5 months, and I've been repeating the same things over and over again. But there is a reason for that. The main reason I keep doing that is because I know that historically one of the main weaknesses I've had approaching Bitcoin at a time frame, whether it was a top or a bottom, was to be prepared whenever something was to happen, in the sense that be prepared of the scenarios, the extreme scenarios you could see in the market, so that if they were to happen, you are not going to improvise and increase the chances, increase the odds of making mistakes. Trading is hard enough when planned. I don't think it's I don't think it's necessary to try to improvise it, unless you are a talented trader, obviously. But if you are a mid-curve trader like me, which is statistically likely the case, make some plans, write them down, and try to execute after that, unless you have any reasons not to. But all right, that was the main thing that I wanted to discuss with you guys. So a quick summary, and then we will do a couple of chat requests. So first, on weekly, any retests of the weekly 300 MA region, to me, is a place where you should be interested in securing some profits if you're short. If you're shorting H4 or daily downtrend retest from here, I believe that retest of this region are a good target to have. If you are not shorting but looking for higher time frame places to start unloading some spots, I also believe that this is an interesting place to do so. But I insist again, it's not because you're buying spot that you should not have a plan. So don't be an idiot, and you would rather play slow than being fucked, basically. Now, if we flip back on the daily downtrend is the main focus. for daily downtrend to be broken, you need to have a close above the daily trend. You need to have H4 200 MA broken. If that's the case, you can aim for the gap fill to daily 100 MA first, eventually daily 200 MA like we did in May. But first thing first, a move back to range high and daily 100 MA would already be fantastic in my opinion. And again, downside target with the weekly 300 MA region. That's why you have these main gaps that I've highlighted on the charts. That's the, if you watch my content and you don't know, you are not sure of what you are seeing, you should know that when I have those kind of circles, it's mostly trying to highlight places where I believe there is value to capture, whether it's shorting or longing. And finally, H4, exact same logic applied, but this time on lower time frame. We must break H4 downtrend, condition H1 200 MA, and get gap stable. All right. It's going to be very interesting through the afternoon to see if this blue box we have here with a lot of wicks remains defended again, and if we manage to save this into another H4 trend retest. I don't know how to interpret those wicks. I'm not going to pretend that I believe it shows necessarily big demand. I guess some people who are smarter than me have some thoughts and analysis about these kind of wicks. Maybe those represents a place where there is actual demand. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I do know. But what I do know is that if defended again plus H4 downtrend break, I believe that we might have something to fill those gaps. And that's about it for me on H4 daily, weekly Bitcoin. I hope it's clear. I believe it is. Again, if you are in the Haven, don't hesitate to watch yesterday's video. I'm already discussing all of that. If you are not in the Haven, but you want to have access to the charts, remember that I almost share daily updates, or at least when I'm at the desk. And on Twitter right now, you can have access to my daily and H4 charts that I just discussed in details. If you want to have access to these after the stream, so don't hesitate. And that's about it. I don't know if there are any questions. I'm gonna check the chat. Why do you try to long reclaim instead of just shorting the trend? The main reason for me, there are a few reasons. One of the main reason is that, as I said earlier, summer tends to be a period where I'm less active, and I feel more comfortable being flat than short when I'm not active. And I do consider that being flat is being short on Bitcoin, because ultimately I want to be able to buy more Bitcoins. But the main reason for that, Copa, is that I'm less active in the summer, and I know that I'm going to be less active. For example, I am leaving to Belgium tonight, tomorrow afternoon, to see Prodigy live, and then I have a wedding, which means that from tomorrow evening to Sunday, I'm basically not going to be able to manage positions, and in which case I'm fine being flat. And the second reason, which is a more general reason, is that I'm overall less good at shorting Bitcoin, at least. I don't care much short. I feel like I'm fine shorting alts, even if I don't do it enough. But historically, I've been shit at shorting Bitcoin, maybe because I'm still too much biased regarding the assets, maybe because I'm still too naive and too much of a bulltard when it comes to Bitcoin, even if I'm fine being flat. But yeah, I'm historically more comfortable with longing than shorting. And also because the final reason is that recently I've been moving funds between platforms with the entire Mika situation happening. I've been consolidating my books a little bit more, and I've therefore been playing spot more than anything else, and I have less exposure to platform where I can short right now. But it's a mix of all of that. I would say that the most honest answer is that I'm less good at shorting than longing. And then the other reason is less active, plus don't have the funds necessary in places that would be able to do so. And finally, maybe the last answer is that I tend to think that there is not enough to capture to the downside anymore. But again, it's kind of cop, because if I'm fine longing this up to H4 100 MA, 200 MA, sorry, it's pretty much the same size gap than to weekly 300 MA. So I don't think it's a valid reason either. But to be honest, if you want to short those kind of retest and things like this, to me it's perfectly fine. System wise, it's just as good. And if you want to short that H4 trend retest, for example, then your plan is to short as close as possible to the H1 200 MA region, and you have an invalidation if we close above, and then you aim for weekly 300 MA, and it's a good enough setup for me. Same thing for the daily, obviously. Same thing for the daily. All right. What's your expectation for end of quarter tomorrow? No expectation on the end of quarter. It's not necessarily something that I am particularly watching in the market or that I have ever watched in the market. I would say that the main time frames that I've been focused on are daily, weekly, H4. I know that a lot of people are watching, monitoring end of quarters, rebalance in the books and all of those things. And if they do, they probably have good reasons to do so. But again, I'm probably too much of a retard to focus on those kind of things. But if I was to watch the 3-month charts, I would say that any buys in the 3 months 32 EMA, which is 48.50k, is a good buy, which aligns with the weekly 300 EMA region basically. But no particular expectation. I think it could be interesting to see over the next few weeks. I would say that outside of the end of the quarter tomorrow, I will be very curious to see what kind of early July we have. Do we have a very quiet early July? For example, if going into July, we end up with a low 60s reclaim, I would not be surprised if for the majority of the summer or at least until early to mid-August, we mostly chop 60s again. If early July we come for the retest of the weekly 300 MA instead, then I think it's going to be a bumpy summer, but probably with strong bounce in between. That you should be looking to sell going into August and then be prepared for September. A little bit like, I don't know if we can go this far, but a little bit like the, I was about to say the July pump of 2024, but I don't know if it's a good representation. I don't know if you see what I mean, but yeah, usually selling going into August, waiting for September. But I don't have the data to back it. But well, and in any cases, I'm going to be curious to see what kind of early July we have, and if it's a reclaim of the low 60s versus a retest of the weekly 300 MA. Probably going to have different expectations. Reclaim low 60 going into July, I would mostly expect to see some chop fest, and by chop fest I mean daily downtrend flattening and potentially being reclaimed into a bounce into the range, and then we see what happens in August. So basically something like this, or probably something like this. I don't know, but I'm going to be curious. I'm probably going to be looking for plays a little bit more seriously when we get into mid-July. And I believe it's in, if I'm not mistaken, we have a lot of earnings also in mid-July in stonks. Maybe I imagine that. I think I saw a post discussing this, but maybe I completely invented that thing. All right, let's take a look at Dodge. I already discussed grass. Keep in mind that it's one of the few places that I'm looking to build a small size long for now, as long as it's above the weekly trend. Outside of this, in the recent focuses we discussed on stream, we had VVV, where basically lost the daily trend, failed to reclaim flip it resistance, filled the gap to daily 100 MA, and been compressing in between. When we are in this kind of situation, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to wait for one of the two sides to break. Either the daily 100 MA, in which case you should expect the gap fill to daily 200 MA, either a break of the daily trend, in which case, if it's defended again, you probably want to start longing VVV again. So the two swiggies. Zcash was also a focus since the hack, but not particularly interested anymore. I'm probably Basically, when we got that event in early June, the main thesis was to let it develop a little bit, see how it manages to find the base again, if it manages to trend again, let it breathe post this kind of dramatical event in the books. So it's still on top of my watch list, as you can see, but I've been less interested. I believe that my Zcash thread in the Haven has been pretty much inactive ever since we got the rest of the position kicked out. Early June it was this moment. And yeah, basically 5 posts ever since where we mostly said that we wanted to let it breathe, basically. Straight back to daily 100 EMA, but not interested to beat it. We'd rather wait for a new daily trend, and it remains true. Outside of this, you are probably all watching Hype. I've been watching it closely yesterday also. But if I'm being honest, I was hoping to see Hype hold above H4 100 EMA. Again, always the same system applied when we have some sort of a EMA compression and we have an attempt to break through it. Ideally, you want to see the trend being defended above 100 EMA. You can see that it's something that we have written on our weekly chart over here. Exit of EMA compression is trend defended above 100 EMA or below 300 EMA. So if we apply the same logic, I was interested to try a long like this, but for this, I would want to see H4 trend being defended above H4 100 EMA. So that would mean that we would want to see H4 getting back above 67 and hold above this region. And if that's the case, I would be interested in taking a long up to the all-time highs. Outside of this, yes, Solana has been discussed a lot. To me, I've been struggling with Sol right now because it's back above daily trend and it broke through H400 EMA, which means that on paper, we have a long like this that we can try and chase up like this all the way up to daily 200 EMA, and the first target is daily 100 EMA. In the system, it's a long that's perfectly valid, but I'm a little bit hesitant. Was the relative strength we just saw mostly just on same fuel and people trying to revive some sort of a nostalgic leg on Solana on chain, or those the Solana on chain participants, let's call it that way, have what it takes to revive Solana? I believe this is a good setup if Bitcoin manages to at least break the H4 downtrend. I have a very hard time expecting Solana to get back all the way to daily 200 EMA without Bitcoin being back in the 60s, basically. So to me, this is a valid setup with a valid invalidation, basically back below the H4 100 EMA region. But I'm struggling to pull the trigger, mostly because of my view on Bitcoin, and until it's back above H4 downtrend at the very least. But if you come to see me and you tell me I'm taking that setup, I would have no, beside the argument of being cautious on Bitcoin and Bitcoin still being fairly weak, I wouldn't have any other thing to tell you. It's a valid setup in my book. So yeah, for Solana, even if you are hesitant to take the setup, I believe that basically you don't want to see it back below you don't want to see it back below this blue box over here, so below 70. I believe that you want to see 73, 70 support at this point. Otherwise, probably cooked. Which reminds me I need to update it, so if you're bullish on Sol, you don't want to see it back below daily trends with H420 MA. So that's approximately 70, 73 must hold. Would probably need BT to stop cheating the beds / break H for downtrend at least. All right. And finally, let's take a look at Doge, because someone asked at the beginning of the stream, what is the real HTF support for Doge? I'm not good. Before looking at the chart, I would tell you that 0.69. 0.069 would make a good number for Doge to find a higher time frame support. It's crazy, to be honest, to see it back to the 2023 prices. What's the real HTF support? That's a very valid question. I believe that one could argue that this entire block over here, obviously, but it's a fucking wide region. It's a 30% block, but it basically represents the entire bottoming process of 2022-2023 plus 0.069, right? Just for the lulz. Oh, but it's been tapped already? No, not yet. Okay. 69 top cake. It's hard to tell. But you see, for example, on something like this, Copa, this is for these kind of charts that I'm comfortable not buying bottoms and that I'm fine waiting for breaks of weekly downtrends. The famous when above where that I've been spamming for the last 5 years on City. So you ask the question, what is the Doge real HTF support? To me, it's when weekly downtrend is going to be broken. Plus minus. Oh, wait a second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry. So plus minus 30% wide. (2022, 2023) bottoming region. So I'm gonna set some alerts into the weekly downtrend below inside this box. But yeah, I don't think, if there are still Doge bulls who exist, I don't think they want to know what's below that 0.05 region. Unfortunately for Doge, it's now associated with Elon political career, if we can call it that way. Aave, sir. Yeah, okay. Let's finish with Aave. I discussed it yesterday rapidly with CBS in the oven. Here is the idea that I had in mind. So I'm going to show you the message that I answered yesterday to CBS. That will be faster. So here what I answered to CBS yesterday about Aave. Um, the idea was two things. Either you play your H4 continuation up to daily 200 EMA, either you wait for daily 100 EMA in daily trend to catch up, and then you want the confluence of both to be flipped supports. Um, Surprisingly bullish in the sense that it's above daily trend and it's above daily 100 EMA, or at least it's trying to be above daily 100 EMA for the first time since $300 basically, which was the Pico bearish retest for Aave right before the 1010. So I would say that there are a couple of things. Ideally, you want to see that gray box flip support, which is basically the daily trend region, so all the way down to 80. I don't think you want to see 80 lost. Ideally, daily trend catches up with daily 100 MA and both flipped / defended. Daily 100 MA trying to break through daily 100 MA for the first time since 300s. If able to hold daily one above daily trends plus daily 100 MA, then next gap fill to daily 200. The main interrogation I have for Aave is narrative wise. If I'm not mistaken, there have been a lot of talks about the Aave token recently, and they have been discussing on how the Aave Foundation and all of that bullshit we have in DeFi could give back some value to the token itself, and it seems that they are trying to make plans of it. But I don't know how much of a narrative it can pick up. It's not. It's a DeFi has been a complicated thing to have a narrative around, basically, because it's in a world where at the moment they can people pile on the next meme coin. I think it's complicated for things like DeFi to capture some attention, or they will need to have some very solid, uh, narrative. So that's the main issue I have is for example, when you have an AI coin, it's very easy to understand the narrative. People make the association AI, okay, it must be bullish. They don't have to think about it more than this. With DeFi, most often it's slightly more complicated kind of thought process. But yeah, okay. Summary is that if you are bullish on Aave, I think you don't want to see it back below 80 basically. And if it's going back below 80, then it means that this entire move was mostly driven off of the recent news and that it's probably going to chop fast for longer at best. So personally, what I would do is I would set some alerts in the 78 up to 81, 82, and you wait to see if retested how it goes. Usually, yeah, when I see something like this, I set some alerts in place where I want to see some defense and then back above daily 100 MA in case we don't weak into this region, but we eventually get back above daily 100 MA, then you need to adjust the approach and the setup. It means that it was stronger than expected. So here's the chat for you, Kali Clan. All right, and I think that's about it for me. That's about it for me for today. I think we discussed most of the things that I wanted to take a look at. XPL, I know that some people are still watching this thing. I've been updating it on CT also. I still believe that it's a no-go as long as it's below the 0.11 region. I still believe you can just set some alerts above that must break and flip daily, weekly basis and wait. Yeah. Morpho has been on my book for quite some time. You can see I have 2 losses over here, 2 attempts to long it. At least I didn't get trapped a third time. But it's in my book. It's the same thing than for Ave. Can it manage to have any attention that it managed to print some legs? Or will the attention be mostly dedicated to Solana meme coins and shit like this? I don't know. But if eventually I have a daily trend above the 2.1, 2.15 region, I will be interested to long probably something that will look like this. Back to the eyes. But yeah, it's on my watch list, but not in position. And I think I covered pretty much everything that I was watching for today. So I'm gonna shut the stream off for today. Before I leave, a quick reminder: Bitcoin H4 downtrend, first focus. Bitcoin daily downtrend, second focus. I believe that the daily downtrend is the best focus to have, mostly because of how reliable it's been since the 78k loss. In terms of main setups of interest, either gap fills up to daily downtrend retest on H4 if/when we have a break of the H4 downtrend. Otherwise, long on a break of daily downtrend into daily 100 MA. If we have to dive from here, unfortunately, set some alerts in the weekly 300 MA. Don't be an idiot going all in this region, but have a plan in case we get there to know how you want to behave, how you want to execute if/when. I would say keep an eye on how grass higher time frame is developing if you want to trade it. However, please keep in mind that personally I would not consider any move on grass anywhere below the daily weekly time frame. If you want to trade that asset, you need to forget about the lower time frame shenanigans. It's very choppy. If you want to approach it, only focus on the daily, weekly, size small at first. If it starts uptrending, you will have many opportunities to size up. But if it goes for a multi-month chop fest, you don't want to be stuck in a full size position. Keep an eye on Hype H4 100 MA fights. Keep an eye on Solana 74-77 fights. In Stonks, SDNK personally has been my favorite shitcoin to go with. It's been very fun to trade. I don't know if you guys are watching those kind of things. But yeah, that's about it. So that's it for today. If you have any question after this stream, don't hesitate to tag me on CT under the main posts that I've done below yesterday's list of updates, for example. If you are in the Haven, simply just ask me in the member question section, obviously. If you are not in the Haven but you are interested, as usual, don't hesitate to check what we offer, especially recently as we have an offer with OKX if you are in the UE and if you are considering leaving Binance to be able to continue to trade. Keep in mind that we have an offer with OKX where you have up to 50% discount on the first month. OKX is fully regulated. You can trade spot, perps, stonks over there. MiCA compliant. You have a match deposit campaign right now, up to 8% yield on any crypto you deposit, which I believe is an interesting deal to go for. So if you are considering joining, don't hesitate to check my profile. Go check the Haven. We have a free weekly newsletter. If you don't want to go for the premium first and you want to see a little bit more of the content we share, it's a very good thing to go first. And yeah, I will see you guys for the next public stream, which should be in 2 weeks from now. I'm going to be particularly busy IRL next week for the next few days. 2 weeks, so I should be less active, whether it's on CT or anywhere else. But I will be back mid-July, as I said, hopefully for a window of time where the market's going to be fun. So I will be streaming again next end of July, mid-July, end of July. And that's about it. Can we have a look at Folks daily trends once? Folks, is that a coin? or you wanted to say Floki, or is that truly a coin? It is a coin. I can check. I can take a look rapidly. Um, not usually the not usually the kind of structure I'm the biggest fan of, Logi, mostly because of that loss of the daily 13 EMA. You can see the entire move you've had from daily 100 EMA to daily 100 SMMA was fueled off of daily 13 EMA being defended, and right now it's lost. What you can do is that you map out where H4 200 EMA is, and if H4 200 EMA is lost, then you should assume that the H4 downtrend, the daily trend is lost, and you should expect a H4 100 MA compression. So to me, it means that short term, it's complicated to judge how the daily trend is going to go because of the daily 13 EMA loss. But what you can tell is this: daily 13 EMA lost for first time on this leg up. Potential H4 EMA compression forming, which means to save the daily, which means all the H4 200 EMA plus reclaim H4 100 EMA equals daily trend saved. Okay, continue to focus on it. H4 200 EMA lost, confirmation, daily trend broken. Expect H4 EMA compression at least, if not full retrace to daily 100. Okay, very rapidly NIR and render, and then I'm leaving because I'm late. NIR, to keep it very simple, if NIR cannot hold the daily above 1.7, 1.8, it's fucked. It's the daily EMA compression. Let's hold daily EMA or forget NIR for some time. Hop, for NIR and for render. For render, yeah. For render, it looks bad. This was a must hold, this is now a must reclaim. If reclaimed plus daily downtrend broken, I believe you can have a spike into the daily MMA. But as long as it's below the daily downtrend, expect daily downtrend continuation. $1.6, $1.7. All right. And that's it. I'm sorry, I really need to leave. You have the links, the TradingView links in the chat section on the YouTube stream if you want to check. And I'm leaving. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thanks for the question and the chat requests. As usual, again, you can check the content in Telegram if you want to have access to the tweets so you don't get lost in your city feed full of AI slop. Don't forget to check the Haven, and if you have any questions for me, you don't hesitate to tag me wherever. I always try my best to answer every questions. Thanks everyone for joining, and I will see you guys in a couple of weeks for the next stream. Cheers.